Except Vijay Chabda, Harshad Parekh, Tankha.
Harshad Parekh, sir, you can unmute yourself.
May start dialogue, sir.
हर तनखा जी भी अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं.
Yes, I have unmuted myself.
विजय छाबड़ा जी भी अपने आप को अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं. आप टॉक स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं सर. पारेख सर.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, friends. Today's topic is about brain, mind, and consciousness. I do not know much about the brain. Scientists study the brain, and a lot of research has been done on the brain, and the brain is matter, and the brain can be studied by scientists because brain is an object. Brain is an object, and the scientist is the subject who is working on it. And brain has is a very important, the most important part of the body, and it is connected with the whole body.
बाकी इस पे वो है बर
ये साइड वाले पेड़ नहीं चलने दे रहा छोटे जो है ना.
May I continue? May I continue?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, okay, because in between some noise was coming. So what I'm saying that brain has been studied by scientists, and it is the most important part, and the messages go from brain to all the parts. The messages go from the brain to all parts of the body, and from the body, the message goes to the brain. And I don't know much about brain, but I can tell you a little. Brain is matter, and apart from matter, we have mind. And mind, we say it is made up of thoughts and feelings. And mind cannot be understood like the way brain is understood, because brain is an object, material object. It is fixed. Brain, the position of the brain doesn't change. There may be some chemical changes, electrical changes goes on in the brain. And our mind, which is we call thinking and feeling, they are kind of electrochemical processes going on. But there has not been a clear correlation between the brain and the mind. And if we want to study the mind, then we have the only instrument is the mind itself can study. Nobody can study my mind, because what is happening in my mind is continuously changing. Like thoughts and feelings are every moment there is a change, and a person who is outside me, like a scientist or a psychologist, he will not know what is going on inside my mind, how thoughts and feelings are continuously changing. But if I am curious, then I myself can look inside and can tell you what kind of thoughts and feelings are going on. And it is also very difficult to study the mind because we don't know all of a sudden how the mind changes the direction. But it is very interesting to observe the mind without trying to study it like the way scientists studying. Because in studying or looking at the mind, the subject and the object both are the same. It's the mind looking at itself. And in that way, we can describe what is happening within you. But apart from thinking and feeling, it seems to me that there is something else which can look at thoughts and feelings very, very clearly. And that it is not a thing, but it has been given a name like awareness or consciousness, which can see clearly how thoughts and feelings are arising. And this dimension of awareness, though it exists in all human beings, but it has not been functioning or has not been awakened. And that is why the thinking and feeling, the mind, the intellect, which creates many, many problems, not for us individually, but also for all human beings and for the whole planet, because there is no awareness, no clear seeing, a lot of destruction has been going on out of selfishness, which we call greed for more power and desire, and so on. And this part interests me very much about the mind and the awareness. The brain, I don't know much about it, and maybe I would not like to spend my time studying the brain the way scientists are studying, but the mind and awareness is something, it interests me because it doesn't require a lot of instruments, laboratory, because the laboratory and the library are both within us. It is possible to look clearly what is happening within us. And when we are able to see it clearly, then some changes may even happen in our body and brain. And then our life can become much clearer. We can stop creating many problems for ourselves in our daily life, and we can really enjoy everything what we do, even looking at a bird or a cloud or a human being. And this looking is very, very interesting. It's a non-verbal thing, and the verbal thing is very much limited. And in that, there is not much beauty. But this non-verbal looking, which we can call awareness, it is very interesting because once we get that thing is awakened looking at, everything becomes very enjoyable. Even when we don't do anything, walking in the park, looking at the birds or the trees or human beings, there is a lot of learning happens unconsciously without trying to learn. And also this looking tells us what is happening, how, if there is any anger arising, we can really see it when this awareness is on. But when this awareness is not on, then all these thoughts and feelings, they can multiply and they create lots of conflict within oneself, with other human beings, and we lose a lot of energy and we get very tired at the end of the day, and a slow deterioration goes on in our mind as we grow older. So that is why this awakening of what Krishnaji calls awareness, or I can also say it's an intelligence, which is a higher dimension than the intellect. Intellect, no doubt, very, very useful, but it can also create many problems. Intellect. It can create lots of conflict. But intelligence is something which can see clearly what the intellect is doing. So any harmful activity done to the body or to the mind itself, it can be seen. And so that is why I think Krishnaji teaching is mostly about this choiceless awareness, which can see things very, very clearly. And this thing has also been studied before Krishnaji, like Upanishads or Buddhism. They have also studied a lot about the human mind. And because for that, scientific instruments are not required, and all one needs is a very, very silent, curious mind to turn inside the attention and to look. And so in Indian philosophy, what we call mind in English, they have different words. They call buddhi. Buddhi means intellect. Manas means memory. And then there is uh, ahankar means ego. And chitta means consciousness. This chitta is the highest, what we call awareness is chitta. And manas and buddhi is the intellect, memory and intellect. So intellect uses memories, and then it uses the memory for good purpose or bad purpose. That is what intellect does. And the lawyers use intellect to prove the wrong thing as right and right as wrong, and so on. And even scientists use intellect to invent many things. So this consciousness, awareness, which is not a matter and which has a no fixed place, maybe it is everywhere. It is within us, it is outside us. And some people has been able to look, uh, have been able to go outside the body and look at the body from outside. Some people have experienced I myself have not experienced. And Raman Maharshi, he had an experience of death at a young age, but it was in the psychological plane, this uh, experience of death, which made him kind of very free. And he left his home and he meditated. And later on, after many years, he had an experience of death. That was the death of the physical body, which he saw from outside. And he saw that the body had even the color of the body had changed. And Raman Maharshi's friend was crying, and he thought that Raman Maharshi had died. But then there was some pulse happened in the body, and the body came back to life again. So this is a great mystery. Our body, our brain, this awareness, we know very, very little. I myself don't know. People have gone very, very deep, and Krishnaji had touched something what he called the ground of all being, the source of all energy. So this is an infinite depth, and I myself know very little. And so, but if our interest continues looking within without any motive, without any trying to learn something, but just looking at, then maybe human beings are possible. It is possible for human beings to go as far as any human being has gone. And I feel that there are many people even living now on this planet. They have gone very deep into this, and this journey is almost an endless journey. So this is all I have to say. Um, People can now, Harsh can say something, and Chabraji, and then we can have a dialogue. Thank you.
छाबड़ा साहब,
Yeah,
please go.
so pick up or uh, okay. See, this brain, mind, and consciousness as there are, of course, there are no absolute synonyms, so there are differences in meanings, but there are certain areas where they all are interchangeable, and that's what seems to happen. Then there are also collocations that certain expressions go together. When Krishna is talking about damaged brain, though, he's probably not talking about damaged consciousness, it's saying damaged brain. So there are, you know, certain collocations or in certain contexts, you prefers a certain word. But for all practical purposes, I think what we are discussing here, if I understand that correctly, that is, it's the psychological, the psyche, the psychological aspect of the consciousness, and with all its contents, the mind becoming aware of itself. You're talking about that awareness of whether the mind can study itself, can be aware of itself, because that capacity is there. But apparently that is not so maybe nurtured the way thinking is nurtured. So, but the main difficulty seems to be that thought being the looking at everything with a static mind in a way, which is whenever there's any conflict, there's any difficulty, there's any new situation, and mind needs to look at it, it very quickly jumps to interpretation. It goes back to its reference work, its library, its, and so it's, it's not in our regular functioning that we remain in intimate contact with actuality. We move from actuality to actuality, from moment to moment. We are in any situation, first we stay with it or look at it and listen to the music, and that we are aware of what is happening outside, what our own reactions. But normally there's a thinking. There's also outwardly often some kind of exigency, some kind of urgency of expressing and explaining. So it very quickly, we go back to our the patterns of the static mind, whatever information we have from the past. So that seems to always interfere. But the actuality is always, that's what probably also, actuality is very alive. It's changing all the time. And maybe that's why it seems, I was wondering, why are the teachings so fresh? Why we always find it so fresh and in a way non-accumulative, because you feel unburdened. Isn't it because the actuality is so fresh that it's all the time new, changing? So, can the challenge is for the mind, the challenge is always, can it be as swift as the moving reality? And that means it's available, it's there, without the interference of one can call static mind, one can call past, one can call the thinking patterns, the habits, gross or subtle conclusions. So that's and one, of course, one learns, one sees that what it does. I mean, conflict, the mind is trying to resolve what it has created, or it creates issues and then it tries to resolve, and the same instrument. So it doesn't work. So maybe somewhere it why doesn't it quickly dawn on one that first just be there? Are you there? Are you listening? Are you just taking cognizance of what is happening? And so why is it that we very quickly respond to any situation with some reaction, with the opposite of it, and that keeps the conflict, the contradiction within going? Oh, and I think there are few aspects, I don't know which, there are one aspect I was wondering, whether we can take up here, that the main one of the contradictions, the basic fundamental contradictions in the mind seems to be that of that the search for security and wanting freedom. No. And because one observes that very prominently all around, especially when you are interacting with young people and you have gone through, yourself from that, through that influences of society, and where everybody wants you to settle down, be secure, but you are, you see in the so-called security a lot of trap, or what the other day somebody is saying, if whatever comes free is actually not free, like Facebook and all this was free, WhatsApp was free. And now it takes away your freedom. So whatever is free actually is, you pay a price for it in terms of freedom. So, and that I think it's, this wanting security and wanting freedom. That the security often, especially, of course, I mean, at one level one sees that there's a basic needs need to be met. But one sees that it's not really often the issue of basic needs or livelihood. Those who really have that urgency, they are not available. They are not here. No, they're not available for discussions. Mostly they are struggling. They are doing something about that. But mostly in the name of physical security, actually psychological security is being sought, and that's not easily seen. And then one struggles there, but then one wants freedom. So I think this dichotomy, I think this keeps that this battle somewhere going on, and that you observe a lot in the youth. You interact with other people, you see that comes up again and again. This whole issue of wanting status, wanting there's a certain sense of comparison, envy, all that, but never expressing that. Instead, we are talking about livelihood, talking about basic needs. So this, and and you see that all, even when those basic needs are met, still there's just worry goes on. So when I think that's one doesn't easily ask that, why should mind be worried at all? Why should there be any worry at all? Not that there are no problems, there are no issues outwardly, there will be always, but this compulsive thinking, compulsive worrying, anxiety, and this dimension of future. So I think this I think needs to be, maybe it can be, this needs to be first understood, I feel. Why is the mind not able to, what I mean is the basic contradiction, the fundamental contradiction needs to be looked at thoroughly, and obviously observed. It's not just, one can intellectually understand that this that wanting security has a price, and wanting freedom, if there's an urge for freedom, is also there, and that's and that will always I think that urge for freedom is very fundamental, and that will however much one may go in the direction of, or wanting security and all, there will always be this. So unless this is understood, that what is it that within that is seeking it? What is it that is seeking security? This certainty, in a way, certainty of future. It's like wanting to have something, having some certainty tomorrow now, which is an impossibility. And that is somehow, I think, missed out. And so this struggle goes on. And this prevents one from, it seems, meeting the actuality. This is that energy not available for meeting the actuality. I mean, there's one, maybe Harshi can take it up and further go into it.
Thank you, Chabda ji. Please, Tankha sir, continue.
Okay, I'll try and pick this up. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I thought I would try and stick to the topic of mind, brain, consciousness. Yeah. And for a start, let me say that when we use the word brain, there are two ways of looking at it. One is externally, like scientists do, as Harshad ji has said. We study the object, the thing that is in our skull, and we can see it's got nerve cells, neurons, axons, firing, all of that, yeah? And there's a material process going on in the brain. And we can link it with thought. We have a fairly good idea that this is connected with our thinking. And this is the external view, and you can push it and study it quite a lot. It's quite amazing what they can do these days. They can stick the brain, somebody inside an MRI machine, and then they listen to music, and certain parts of the brain will light up in the MRI machine, and you can associate, you can say, this part of the brain listens to music, this part of the brain is to speech, this part of the brain does maths. So they can analyze the brain in this way. But that's the looking at the brain from the outside. But I think what we are concerned with over here is the interior, from looking at the brain from the inside, which is to say our awareness of thinking. Now we all are aware of thought. It's quite interesting because some people say there are 6 senses, the 5 external senses, and then there is the sense by which we know what we are thinking. And how do we know we are thinking? There is a sense that tells us, that kind of hears the thoughts that are running in our brain, that sees the images that are in our minds. Now we say minds, I'm going to be as careful as I can about the use of these words, brain and mind. So generally we say, I can picture this in my mind, right? So I want to explore a little bit what we mean by the different ways we talk about brain and mind, and related to what Krishnaji has to say. So, various people have different ideas of mind. Obviously, mind is in some way connected to thought. And the simplest idea that is around that people talk about is, they call it, mind is an emergent quality of the brain. What does this mean? The example they give is, if you have, say, a motorcycle. Now you take all the parts of a motorcycle and you put it together, and there's certain process and so on. When you do that, you have no idea that once all these parts are put together and they function, this thing will move quite fast. So movement and motion is something that arises out of the parts of the motorcycle working together. And that is what they mean by emergent quality. So people, one way we think about the mind is, okay, we are thinking, but there's sum total of the thoughts, these processes, this is all my mind. And it gives rise to our idea that this is, and this is how we talk. It's not that this is just some theory. You look at ordinary everyday thinking and we will be thinking, oh, you know, I'm changing my mind. I have this in my mind. I have that. So that's this quality that my thoughts are giving rise to my mind is one way we talk about mind. That's fairly clear. Now, in this way of thinking, if there's no thinking going on, if there's no thought, there's no mind, because the mind is a collection of all these thoughts. Obviously, this is not, but another way we think about mind, which is very common and probably the most usually way we think about mind, is as if the mind is a container which contains my thoughts. So it's like, now if we think of mind like that, then we can talk about emptying my mind. You couldn't, if the first way of thinking, you couldn't talk about emptying your mind, because if there are no thoughts, there's no mind. But now we can say, okay, my mind is kind of a container. The thoughts are going on. Thoughts can become less and thoughts can quieten down. And then what is left, that emptiness, is my mind. Now this begins to sound a little bit like what Krishnaji or other people might have been saying about even the silent mind or something like that. But I think I would suggest that Krishnaji goes beyond that as well, that mind is not just a container for your thinking. And now one of the difficulties in listening to Krishnaji is that he actually uses the words mind, brain, and consciousness quite loosely. And one day he will say the mind, which is the brain. Next day he will say mind is different from the brain. So I thought I would read you one or two quotations from Krishnamurti that would bring this to light. So here is one. I mean by mind the brain, the movement of thought, consciousness, the whole content of our consciousness, the senses, all that is the mind. I'm using the word in that sense. We may alter it later on, use a different word. For now, we're using mind to convey all that. So sometimes he uses mind to convey the movement of thought, the whole content of thought, of consciousness, and so on. So this is in July 78. And then he says, somebody asks him, you often switch from using mind to brain. Is there any difference between them? If so, what is the mind? Krishnaji says, I'm afraid it's a slip of the tongue. That is, I have often said the mind, the brain. I apologize for that. I was only talking about the brain, right? So he's often, so the real question that he moves on to is, okay, so what, we have a fairly good idea of what the brain is, the movement of thought, the senses, all of that is taking place. And I think all of us can easily sense that. Now, the purpose of saying all this is that what somebody else says about this is actually at best a description of something that they're experiencing. And the really important thing is, whenever you're looking at something that is internal, is that each of us need to be looking internally at the functioning of our own minds, of our own brain, whatever words you want to use, and that you are observing that. So what, now Krishnaji was obviously talking about something, calling it the mind, which is different from the brain. But he says that the first thing, if you want to find out what the mind, you have to first understand the operation, the functioning, the mechanism of the brain, the mechanism of thought. And for that, you have to observe thought. And when you observe thought, a question arises, you can see that thought is material process. It's something that is happening materially. You can see that thoughts are clearly arising. I mean, we can do, each of us do this for ourselves. It's not, he's not great. We don't have to follow Krishnamurti or anybody else for that. We can see for ourselves that thoughts arise from other thoughts. Thoughts arise from what we've seen before. We see somebody, we recognize them. When we say we recognize them, we mean that there is something in the past that is stored in our brain, what they look like or what kind of person what experience we've had in our interactions with them. And therefore we say, okay, they're like that, maybe they were angry last time, so I think so-and-so may be angry with me now, so this is, we can quite easily observe all this going on in our mind. And this is obviously, very obviously, a movement in time. And which is why I think Krishnaji often says, thought is time, but I don't want to dwell on that. It's just, this is the thought process. And the interesting thing about the thought process is that even as we observe the thoughts that are running through our mind just now, we are also aware that there is in the background lurking all kinds of memories. We know that, we can sense that, we can feel that anytime I want to, I can think of what happened yesterday or what happened even 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. I can draw on that and bring it up to the surface. And generally, all of these things are words or pictures, or maybe a smell or a taste comes back, or a feeling, or, all of these things can be recalled. They can be recalled even if they are not in the forefront of my mind. I'm calling it mind. Maybe I should be calling it brain, right? But that is the way we use the word mind. We tend to say, this is in the forefront of my mind, which should tell us that we are thinking of mind as this kind of container. And right on top, on the surface of this, is what is happening right now, and I can recall things from the past and feelings and so on. So this is the mind that we normally think about as the mind. But Krishnaji asks this question. He says, so is there a process that is not in time? So now can you observe? If you're observing the process which is taking place in time, if you're aware of that, if you are, can you also, while you're doing that, ask this question: is there something else which is not in time? And if you focus on that, if you can focus on that, then that is what he's talking about. He's clear about this at other time, that this is the mind, that process which is not in time. And it's not an emptiness. It's not an absence of something. On the contrary, it's full of energy. And if you attempt to do this, you may see that it has a great vibrancy. It has the vibrancy of looking, of listening, of being aware of everything that is around you. It has that quality, far from the quality of vacant emptiness. And what he means, I think, by the silent mind is this quality, very alive, very capable of observing and listening, but which is fresh and new. It's listening afresh. It's looking at what's happening around, and this is what he talks about as the mind. Your mind is alive then, we can use it the words in English like that. We can say the mind is very perceptive. The mind is listening. And since all ideas that we have about ourselves, I'm not saying right or wrong or being beyond the self or anything, are basically in memory, are in the realm of thought. This is who I am, this is what I do, this is my name, all of that are in the realm of memory. So it's also clear, right, that the mind is not part of the self, because the self is completely. So I'm trying to explore what are the qualities of mind. So I think another thing, if we explore this, is that the mind is capable of, firstly, it's outside time. Firstly, then it's very alive. It's looking and listening. And then is capable of a holistic perception, that it is, it's not partial. Usually our thinking is, when we observe with thought, it becomes partial. We all begin to look at, because immediately thought starts to name things. So when I was at Brockwood with my students, I used to do some observation exercises. And I would ask them to observe what happened when they encountered familiar objects, what happened in their mind. And, and you observe the naming process. You look at something like a rose, and then you say, it's a rose. Now, the moment you say it's a rose, you've recognized it, and everything you know about roses is there and begins to come into your mind. And then you may fail to notice what is new. So I was asking them to put aside everything that would come into their minds from the past, that they knew, what was already known about the rose. In fact, to not even name it, because even naming it is falling into the zone of the known. But just look. And if you look at a rose without naming it, without relying on what you know about it already, you begin to see its form, you begin to see its shape, you begin to see things about it, you begin to see subtleties of color, you begin to see all kinds of things that you hadn't seen before. So this is a quality of the mind that is free of thought, that it can see things new, it will take into, of course, those things will get recorded in memory and they will become thought. So, that also is a process that happens. But it is the mind that is looking at things afresh. And then the mind, if you try, is capable of looking at the whole and not things partially. So to do all that, I think it takes a lot of attention. It takes a commitment to this observing thought, but not being caught up in it, not being drawn into it, not being sucked into the whole process, which is very attractive, because all kinds of things, even what we consider good things, I must help so-and-so, I must do this, I've got to go out and buy the right food, I don't know, all kinds of thoughts will pull you in. And but the real challenge is whether we can continue up to observe thought, not try and end thought, because at some level thought is necessary. I can't be speaking just now without using thought. But whether one is awake or alive in that level which is beyond thought. And that, I think, is the challenge that Krishnamurti puts to us. And that is why he talks about mind as different from the brain. I think that's probably quite a lot I've said. So,
Yeah. May I bring in one point or just a question to what Harshji was saying? That is probably the issue, because we, just often interacting with some associates. I see that the difficulty when you say observing the mind without getting caught in thought, without getting caught in it's obviously, we know that it's easier said than done. This is the difficulty. You see that happening, and it's a challenge to find a way of penetrating, communicating that, because one grows up many decades in this way, one grows up that way. I mean, that we have to resolve everything through thought. So, and even when you are reading, Krishnji, reading, the different people can read differently. You say if you listen to, a talk more as a music in a way, instead of analyzing which raga and which, what and what I'd heard and all that intervention coming in, or somebody is just listening and something, it rings true, may not understand, but rings true. Now, these are two very different readings, different listenings. So, but that's what, it's so strong. So how does one, I mean, because you had that kind of experience of interacting with a lot of young people over decades. So this strong habit of somewhere always taking recourse to thinking only, coming back to some conclusion, even though you may have read, you have to look, but very quickly, you slide back into thinking. You're not, the span of looking or listening is just not available to you. It's not been part of your life. Though the intention is there, one sees the value of it, the beauty of it. But, so this, I wonder how, I mean, this is just, I see that difficulty with, communicating this, or, of course, there's no maybe fast drug for it, but I was just wondering whether there's a intelligent way of penetrating it, in a discussion, in people who have not been, have been used to this so strongly.
May I say something?
Yeah. Yes.
Like to see thoughts as they are when they are coming, it requires a freedom to see, That means, as Krishnaji says, freedom is at the beginning. And without that freedom, thoughts will go round and round, creating more thoughts and get trapped into thinking. Like a spider, it doesn't get trapped in its own web, but human mind gets trapped in these thoughts which are not seen clearly. And that is the main problem, because to see thoughts clearly, it requires freedom. And that freedom, I feel that it is very frightening for most people to come out from this plane of thinking, because in that there is no sense of I or me, where everything is seen very clearly. And that, to have that no sense of I or me, is very frightening for most people. And so on one side, as you said, Chabraji, security. People want security. And if they want security, they have to build a wall around themselves so that they remain secure. But freedom requires breaking the boundary of that wall, because without, as long as the wall remains around this me or myself, there is no freedom. So the real freedom is the freedom from this self, I, thinking, feeling, and to be in that state of awareness which can see things very, very clearly. And such freedom has been expressed even in the past, like Shankaracharya, there is one Nirvan Shatakam in which it says, Mano Buddhi Ahankar Chetani Naham. Means I am not the mind, I am not intellect, I am not ego, I am not memory. And it says many things. I am not this, I am not that, I am not guru, I am not disciple, I am the Chidananda Rupam Shivoham Shivoham. So that is that state where there are total freedom from this I or me. That is the most difficult thing for human being, because there is a fear of not being. It's like a psychological death. And so people can sharpen their intellect to a great degree, but to make a transition from intellect to intelligence, coming out and then looking at the intellect from that dimension of intelligence, that is a real freedom. Then intellect doesn't do any harm. But without that intelligence, the real freedom, intellect will play games, and it will justify the wrong thing as right and all that thing. So I think the main problem is the fear of freedom, fear of not being, a psychological freedom. Okay, I finish.
See, a
Tarun
question
Kumar.
we can.
Tarun Kumar wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Actually, I have some submissions for the today's topic. 4 things are defined: Man, Buddhi, Chit, and Ahankar. Here, Buddhi is representing functioning of brain, and brain is using memory for its functioning, like a computer.
चला चला तो conduct नहीं कर पाएंगे.
Further, Man is near to mind. Meanwhile, Chit is constituted of sanskaras, which are created by different experiences of different things during different times and in different situations with a different mindset every time. And the 4th one, that is the Ahankar, is the self. And self is ruling our lives with the help of other 3, that is Man, Buddhi, and Chitta. But the interesting thing is that all things get alive, Man, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahankar, because of the awareness only. If there is no awareness, nothing will work and will become alive. Now the question lies, where is the boundary between the self and the awareness? So to know it, the one tool is available with awareness, which is so wherever you observe, that thing will get charged, will get energy, or become alive, active. Anything you can take. Away from focus, everything is dead, particularly for that moment. When there is no focus, that thing is present, but still it has no meaning. In our lives, we have given this power of focus or observation to the self, and it focuses on external interactions continuously while taking help of other three. As pure awareness represent us, not the body. So once awareness focus on only power of knowing or choicelessly observes its own power, then the life become near to so-called transformation. Only these are my submissions. Thank you.
Siddhanand ji. Anand sir, I mean Anand sir. Please unmute and then.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is, I mean, I'm making a point, like without the brain, there's no consciousness and there's no mind. And Krishnamurti also said, when somebody asked him, that he uses the mind in place of brain, and he agrees with that. Now, the mind is when it is free from conditioning. Psychologically, when it is free, when the brain is psychologically free, that's the mind. So when Krishnamurti was free, now when he uses the mind and the brain, there was nothing wrong. Probably it was a misunderstanding, or probably we are incapable of understanding when he uses that. My point is, without brain, there is no consciousness, there is no mind. So they originate from the brain. Consciousness is everything that thought is put together, and the mind is which is free from the psyche. That is what it is. I mean, I just wanted to make that point. That's all.
What I feel is that brain is just a matter which is an instrument through which the mind works. So all these thoughts, feelings are generated, and for that brain is required. And the mind is not only within the brain, it can also be outside the body, mind.
It's off the brain.
Yeah, right.
The
And
brain has
we
got no
are
connection with the mind. The brain has got no connection with the mind. The mind has got a connection with brain.
Yes. Yeah. And if something is happening very far, I see that phenomena like a fire going on in California, and then thoughts arise about that in my brain. So the source of the mind is not in the brain, because I saw something outside which created thoughts. So the mind is everywhere, brain is localized, and it is an instrument, just like a machine. That is what I feel. And mind is much subtle, and scientists don't know what the mind is actually. They say that it is a, yeah.
So when I see oh yes, sir, go ahead, sir. Please go ahead. Yeah.
When I look into myself in my daily living through reflective consciousness, none of these things which we have been discussing for the last 1 hour, none of these things come to me, or for that matter, I can vouch nobody else must be facing this discussion when actually it's so. When you start with the words, you end up in words only. So this has happened, what Krishnamurti said. I have read almost 90% of the books and seen some of the YouTubes. Usually the question is, what you said at that time, what do you mean by that? So till today, we have been discussing what he said at a particular time. where he is emphasizing on self-knowledge. In my self-knowledge, how does these things, do these questions come to you when a challenge is there suddenly? When you go out and meet any challenge, which challenges are there, always there. Neither Upanishad comes, nor anybody's quotation comes, nothing comes, and you face it as such. Now it depends whether how diversified, or rather how deflected, or rather how many desires you have, how many ways your mind is going to. So based on that, your seeing and listening is affected. That is clear. What he talks about the freedom is there. Are you free? You don't have many things to think about at a moment when you are seeing or listening to. So this is very clear. We don't have to have, for the last 40, 50 years, we have been discussing these things. It's so simple. How do I face it in my daily life? That is what he also, as a teaching, he tells me, look, what are you doing with yourself? Every moment, moment to moment, you are also changing, and the observed, so-called observed, is also changing. So my psyche is also a little bit, it becomes mobile. So these things we complicate, I think we complicate by using so many words and trying to get meaning out of it. And this is our intellect. If anybody doubts it, he can clarify me. And still, the clarity is not there to all of us, whether this is brain or this is mind or this is consciousness. This is container, this is the content, and this is me. So this is what I feel. Honestly, I'm telling you that we have been discussing words and words and words and their meaning. So how does it help in self-knowing? I don't know. People can clarify about it. But through this, the clarity is still not there, whether this brain, mind, and consciousness, they are three or one. And then we talk of holism beautifully. Holistic. In holistic, we mix up everything and then again start with fragments. So fragments will give discussions. If you are interested, we are interested in discussions. Wonderful. This is going on. This is what I feel. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
Yeah, I would like to tell you honestly also that after coming into contact with Krishnaji's teachings, there is a possibility in myself, not possibility, it's an actuality of seeing things clearly, whatever the thoughts are coming effortlessly. No effort required, no reading of Krishnamurti required, but things are seen clearly by itself. Effortless awareness has come after reading Krishnamurti. So it's not just the words, but behind the word, there is something which these teachers are saying something, and whether we are able to catch it, what is behind the word, it depends on our own sensitivity, our own passion for it. And if we are really, then we have to look at ourselves only, daily life activities, and any problem which happens in the daily life, it becomes a opportunity to learn about ourselves. So learning is in relationship with people around. And then we can know whether we are going in the right way or wrong way. We can tell if our life is becoming much simpler and very clear and enjoyable, and only we can tell. And then we don't need to read anything, not even Krishnamurti or anything. But we are talking about this because we have a program here and we have to use words. Otherwise, words are not necessary to look at what is going on within us. And that is a real freedom, non-verbal seeing. So this is what I am telling you. It's not just intellectual stuff.
No, it's
But
okay.
sir, when I say I see clearly, sir, I see the forest in California. Do I understand that I am responsible for that fire? Or when I see a rose without the
Yeah.
word, I say it's only about myself. I'm back to my conditioning. If I want, I can get another example, sir. When I see a cow on the road, do I understand why the cow is on the road? When I say I see the cow, do I really see the cow? My question is, when I'm talking about the cow should not be there on the road, I say, sir. But do I see that I am responsible for the cow on the road is my question.
Well, whenever I see something which is not right, like in my city, I have even contacted many people and it has happened also. So, but you are saying no.
Sir, again, when you say somebody is angry, I mean, you are seeing from because you recognize that anger and you're saying that. Again, when you say a complaint to officials, I mean, there is no big thing in it, sir. I mean, can I say that I am responsible for the cow on the road? And I have gone and informed the officials.
But
I go to Cubbon Park for my walk, and there they have complained the pigeons. They should what do you call? They didn't want the pigeons in the Cubbon Park. They said they caused flu, a bird flu, and they didn't want the stray dogs. Now, fortunately, the officials have not taken action. People have gone and complained. We are the most dangerous people, as Kay says. Man is the most dreaded animal. And we don't want them. I mean, I don't even understand why the cow is on the road, sir. I have gone and told the officials they should not be there. Do I understand that I am responsible for it? When I say I see, I'm questioning that.
so,
Yes,
if
sir.
I may say something at this point,
Yeah.
Please go on. Tankha sir, please go on.
see, I think that this kind of discussion and is really about looking inward. So I would ask you, did you actually see when you saw the cow? Because that you are responsible. Perhaps you saw it, perhaps you didn't, but that is for you to see. And it's for each of us to see when we react to what is around us, what is the source of our reaction? This whole question of observation and awareness is about what is happening within us. Mostly we are focused on what's happening outside us, and central to what we are talking about is what is happening within us and the awareness of that. Are we aware of that? And I have to say to you that anything that I say, I am talking about what I see. I may not be getting it right. My own seeing may be distorted or false, but I'm not repeating anybody's words. I'm forced to use words. But yes, of course, I can see what I'm thinking most of the time. I can be aware of what I'm thinking. I'm aware of what I'm thinking. So when I say to you that we have a sense of thought going on, I'm talking about something that arises from my own direct awareness. And when I'm talking to you about the possibility of it ending, there are times in my life when the thoughts can be put aside. They're there to come up when necessary. Like now I'm talking to you. I need the thoughts. I need the words. I need them to know the meanings of the words. So, but I'm talking about something that I'm looking at, and the words are coming. And the question is that a first-hand, accurate observation of what is going on around me, or am I just repeating somebody else's words? Is this some second-hand thing that is in my memory that I am repeating to you, or is it first-hand? I think that's the challenge for us. We're going to use words. We're going to have to communicate. Question is, whether they're first-hand, whether they're born of direct perception, whether they're born of our looking and seeing and awareness. And that is the challenge. Just to relate something that happened last week, I discovered something. I have some land problems here in Dehradun. I was out on my land, and the land mafia, 30 people, there were 3 of us, 30 people came to attack me, my nephew, and our chowkidar, the land chowkidar. And they were trying to throw us off the land, and physically, violently, they spared me a little bit because they saw I was older, so they didn't physically. But my nephew, who's younger, and the guard, they just went for, 7 or 8 of them beat him up. But for me, the interesting thing was, and I will say this because I was observing my own reactions. This was the way I respond to a situation like that, because I have to be, that's the best way to, I've learned. You have to be aware of your own reactions. You have to understand yourself in that situation. You have to, otherwise your fears will overcome you, your anger will overcome you, or any of that. And that will lead to all kinds of, so this is no theory. This is no such stuff that I'm reading about. Having that close understanding of the interior responses is absolutely, and I discovered that I did not have the slightest bit of fear, despite the fact that they were throwing big stones and they were beating up this guard, and he was getting bloodied. And as I say, I was a little bit safe because they didn't want to attack an older person. So they didn't. But for me, the most interesting thing was that in that situation, the observation of not just what is going on outside, but what is going on inside, and understanding that and responding from that was helping me to act. We called the police came, they weren't enough, they couldn't control them. We called more police, and finally 4 policemen were there all together, and they managed to, our poor guard was badly beaten up, and there was a lot of shouting and cursing and so on and so forth, but not reacting with anger, not reacting with fear, not reacting violently, not, was down to being aware of, not that I didn't feel, or, I could see that they could arise, but, they were. So it is, I have to say, because I have been reading and studying Krishnamurti for many, many years. And I have probably read as many books and been in as many discussions as the gentleman earlier. And that, yes, it does actually is central to the way that I live my life. Though I may live an ordinary life, and I do the same thing as everybody does, is to go out, go shopping, buy food and so on. But where the quality of awareness and observation is, but it's not 100%, it's, you slip, but then can you be aware of why you slipped into the thing, and not to be upset with yourself, but okay, I was drawn into this. I did get angry sometime, or I did, then you learn the nature of anger if you continue to observe that. And that is a way of living. That is a way of, which is very real. It's not intellectual, and it's not something that is just words, it's.
So my question is, when I say that I see, and I put that question, so when I say I see, I'm putting that question, that I'm back to my condition. That's my point.
But and when you say you see, is it, what question, what do you see? Do you see that the cow,
yes,
your responsibility?
Yes, I'll give that example of the cow, sir.
Yeah.
When I saw I'll tell you, most people have not understood why the cow is on the road.
Sure.
All right. Now, do I see that by drinking milk, and milk, consuming milk products, is the cow is on the road because the milkman, after the 18 years of after the cow stops giving milk, he just throws the cow out, and that's why it's on the road. Most of the cows on the road because they require money to feed when it can't give milk. You and me drinking milk is the biggest cruelty on the planet, and it is responsible for the forest being cut down. The California forest, which is put on fire, is done by man. Given to understand, it's again for animal agriculture. So because you put the question, sir, it's been about a couple of years now. I have stopped all animal products, not because of Krishnamurti, sir. It's not because of Krishnamurti. I saw that. I did not say I should stop. It just happened. So when I say that I see a cow on the road, it should not be there. I'm questioning. I put that question. Do I see because of my consumption of coffee and tea is responsible for that cow? Most 99.9% people do not agree, sir. They say I can't change my habits. I'm habited. My sweets, my chocolates, my cheese, my butter, everything is made from the cow's milk, which I'm not willing to give up. But I want to give up. No, they say that I'm angry. I'm not angry, sir. Please, I'm not angry. But the moment someone says I'm angry, because the person is observing me from what he thinks. I'm not angry. I'm like this even with everyone. And I have not asked my wife, I have not asked my children not to consume milk or milk products or meat. I have not. People say that I'm not telling anyone also. Because the question is raised, I'm trying to give an answer. I'm trying to say that I have, so that's about all. There's nothing great about it.
No,
So
I'm trying to
someone,
understand the point you're making. If I understand you correctly, the point you're making is that we do not always, sometimes we do, but a lot of the time, most people do not see the connection between their own actions and what is happening in the world outside.
Absolutely.
That's the point you're making. So yes, I would say that, I would agree with you that we do not mostly. And sometimes even when we do, it seems so impossible or so difficult to do anything about it that we kind of give up and then we continue in the way that we are continuing.
And we are talking about, going beyond thoughts, sir, beyond time and space, meditation. When I cannot do the simple, one old gentleman, he passed away, Mr. Mishra, who was in the Chennai office. Then he moved to Nagpur, I think. He says, sir, I can do anything, but I can't give up my coffee. No, you see, I mean, how I am trying to mislead myself.
True.
Mislead myself. But I'm talking about thought. I talk about time and space. I talk about meditation.
There is a reason for that, if I may say so, sir. So if you look at yourself and you see that what you're doing is affecting everything, that does not mean that you immediately find yourself able to do something. You see that you have a bad relationship with your son, let's say, right?
Sir,
you get upset.
That's precisely most
so
people
now
say
what are you
that,
going
sir.
to do? You don't want to have a thing.
Sir, it is not about me and my son, sir. I'm just a tiny part of nature.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's not me, and I may have a fantastic relationship with my son, with my wife, with my father, with my mother, but that is not sufficient.
No, that's what I'm saying. Please listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that when I see that, what is the action that I need to take? See, if you look into it deeply, you will discover that there is a reason for conflicts between, and then you need to really look deeply, and then you really need to, and that is when we start talking about thought and the action of thought, because we discover that what is happening out there, what is happening with the cow, what is happening with my son, is based on the deep movements of our thinking, of our conditioning, of what we have got used to, what we expect. All that is what is causing that. But you have to see that first. When you begin to see that, that is when you start asking the question of yourself, is there something that can affect this? What can affect this on the deep level necessary for actual change to come about? Otherwise, superficial change will take place.
So this is what it is, sir. That
Thanks.
There is
sir.
a change which has taken place.
Sir, thank you very much for asking questions. Yes, the time is over, sir. So I have to finish the meeting.
Okay.
And
Yes,
I
sir.
want
Yes, sir.
to check with the Chaitanya Nagar. If he wanted to say something, Chaitanya Nagar sir, do you want to say 2 or 3 minutes something to us? Nagar sir, am I audible to you? No response from Nagar sir.
वो अनम्यूट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं अपने आप को शायद।
अच्छा, एक बार और रिक्वेस्ट करके देख सकते।
नागर
हाँ मैं
मना कर रहे हैं, नागर सर मना कर रहे हैं।
अच्छा ठीक है सर, थैंक
नागर
यू।
सर मना कर रहे हैं।
सर फिर ये मीटिंग को अपन क्लोज कर रहे हैं अभी, फिर some other day we will continue these dialogues. Is it okay?
One small question, Sushil ji. One small question.
Sir, questions will never be ending, sir.
One small question to Harshad ji, Parekh.
Okay.
Sir,
If we have done all these years, if we have seen, observed,
should be the last question and should be
Yes,
answered
yes.
within a minute.
I will make it short. If we have observed without observer and gone beyond words all through in our life, after hearing him first and then Chintan Manan ke baad bhi, then the same questions are still there, the same words are still there. If we have gone beyond them already, an observer without observing, without observer and going beyond words, how come there is no clarity on these words even now? Next time we can take this.
Yeah, okay. We don't have time now.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for listening.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks to
So
all.
it's the same link for Sunday, sir, for Mr. Lee. Mark
Yes,
Lee.
sir. Same link. All the time link remains the same. And you are
Same link.
requested to
Right,
come on 9:30 a.m. Sunday.
9:30 a.m.
9:30 a.m.
Sure.
9:30 a.m. I
Yes,
am repeating every time. I too forget 9:30 or 11. So 9:30.
9:30.
9:30, okay.
Kamlesh, please close it. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks
you
to
very much. Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,